Brands Hatch, where the sound and fury of motor racing is in evidence most weekends in the summer, and the best meetings are organised by the British Racing and Sports Car Club. Are races for all classes, including Formula Ford, Formula 3, which is a sort of motorised Scrabble, saloon cars, GTs, Formula 5000, sports cars, Formula 1, and the new Formula 100, especially for Les Leston's benefit. On a typical race day, competitors arrive early. Then it's a question of finding your correct pad, unloading the bits and pieces, and starting the annual rebuild. Bearing in mind the paddock's on a slope, you've got to be a bit careful. You could have your first accident before the meeting starts. And it's on to scrutineering, where Fred Harrison is in command. And it's like trying to get a camel through the eye of a needle to fiddle something past him.
Yeah, I haven't got a spanner just now, but I know if you can do this before you go out and practice, and then we'll check it again, all right? Yeah, okay, I'll do that. Otherwise, this is okay. Right.
And on to the numbers game. Frankie Lee in command. So far, so good. And you're now in with Bert Lamkin. It's a sort of demented traffic cop's job that he has to do, and also be a father confessor.
This is your grid position, old lad, in case you've forgotten it. Where you start from and where you finish entirely up to you. Okay? Jolly good.
So now you know what you're meant to do, and it's off to the track. Looks like a very late entry. And once out the other end of the tunnel, you're in command of another set of marshals. They line you up on the grid, and you're in their hands from now on. This was the Guards' International Formula 3 meeting, and it brought out the top boys in this keenly contested formula, including David Cole, Barry Maskell, Bev Bond, Tony Trimmer, Jean-Pierre Joussard, and many others. Miss Office World was there, but I don't think she was the first prize. With a first heat win for Jerry Birrell and heat 2 to Tony Trimmer, The final promised to be a battle between these two. And when the show started, it was a traffic jam at the first corner. With so much traffic about, the marshals have their hands full, and Ken Corbett on post 9 is kept busy with the blue flag. Tony Trimmer dominates the first part of the race, followed by Birrell, then Hunt, Maskell, Williams, Morgan, and all the rest, with Jurg Dubler working his way through the field. Jerry Birrell is pressing Tony Trimmer, and aided by good flag work on post 4, he takes the lead, which he continues to improve. And eventually he wins by 4 seconds. The victor takes the spoils. And for the less fortunate, it's a case of wrap it up and take it home and hope for better luck next time. One small problem, how do they get the mechanic out of there? Perhaps they unwrap him at the next meeting. Sponsored by the Daily Mail, the Race of the Champions in March opened the European Formula One season. And our cameras now slip back in time to cover this event. A new crop of cars, notably the March 701, with Jackie Stewart in the Ken Tyrrell car, and Chris Amon in the STP Works entry. Jack Brabham was driving the Motor Racing Stable's new Brabham BT33, and Jackie Oliver is with BRM, the P153 now in Yardley colours. Jochen Rindt had last year's Lotus 49C as the new 72 was not ready. And Graham Hill was in a similar car, driving for the Rob Walker team. Jean-Pierre Beltois had the 12-cylinder Matra MS-120. That is, until the last practice session, when he lost it at Clearways. A last-minute fast practice lap put Jackie Stewart in pole position. And making up the front row is Jack Brabham and Jackie Oliver. The flag is raised, and they're away. And the young BRM driver makes a superb start from the outside and leads the field into Paddock Bend. The order is Oliver, followed by Stewart, Brabham, and Graham Hill, making his first appearance at the wheel in England since his crash in America last year. Then Amon, McLaren, and Hulme. Oliver in the BRM was setting a cracking pace and seemed to have the race in hand. Oliver's performance must have pleased Raymond Mays in his Yardley Woolly. Peter Gethin, the reigning Formula 5000 champion, was having his first Formula One drive in the McLaren M7A. And Chris Amon comes in with engine trouble, which was finally resolved on lap 11. Meanwhile, Brabham in top form passes Stewart on lap 9 and takes the lead from Oliver on lap 10. Oliver's race ended on lap 13 with stub axle failure. And Stewart was working hard in the March 701 to keep the leader in sight. But the race seemed set for Brabham in a thinning field. But with 2 laps to go, The ignition goes sick on the Brabham, and Jackie Stewart leads the race. Back in the pits, Ken Tyrrell almost betrays a flicker of excitement. The transistor box on the BT-33 is changed in record time, and Jack Brabham gets back in the race, going like the wind. But time runs out, and a surprised and delighted Jackie Stewart records the first win for a new Formula One car. Brabham was back in cracking form for the season with a new and very promising car, and was robbed of the race by cruel luck, almost at the post. This was to set the pattern of events to come for Jack in a season which was to prove all too tragic for Formula One racing. April the 12th, and the monsoon season starts for the BRSCC 1000. The drivers put on a brave face. The fuel arrives, and the pits stock up. The cars and supplies join the circuit. Some of the drivers were quite surprised. It seemed a bit darker when you got outside the tunnel. Chief Observer Bill Webley briefs the observers, while Chief Flag Marshal Monty Tyrrell has a final word with his boys. Chief Marshal Eddie Goodman doesn't seem to get wet. He must have found a dry job. The cars form up on the grid for the noon start, with 2 Ferraris and 1 Porsche in the front row for the 3rd round of the 1970 World Sports Car Championship. Pedro Rodriguez adjusts his visor, and Piers Courage tries to keep dry in the Alpha. And the Atwood Herman Porsche 917 has a top-up. Herbert Muller ponders in the Filippinetti Ferrari 512S. Joe Bonnier hopes for better luck this year in the Lola T70 Mark IIIB. Siffert arrives to drive the other John Wyer Porsche 917, and the Martini Porsche team make it a party. The big question is tyres, and the Ferrari team changed their wet ones for wetter. Jackie X tries to demist his screen, and Nick sends them off to try the circuit in the wet. The cars reform on the grid as noon approaches. And Greville Smith drops the flag, and the BOAC 1000 regatta is on. Vic Elford in the white Porsche 917 takes the lead from the outside at paddock, followed by X, Siffert, Amon, Courage, Rodriguez, and the rest. Nobody's quite sure whether the lights are on to see or just as a reminder. Coming off clearways on the first lap, the drivers were fighting to hold their cars on line on the rain-soaked track, and not all were successful. Barry Smith in the Sid Taylor Lola crashes, and the car disintegrates in front of the press box. The driver is unhurt, and the marshals make a quick rescue. This is the moment when good marshalling really tells. It prevents an accident becoming a tragedy. The race is slowed while the debris is cleared. And Nick, the governor, waves the yellow flag. The flying Rodriguez does not see the flag, and he is duly called in and reprimanded. Lap 2, and X in the Ferrari passes Elford and leads the race. This causes a certain amount of excitement amongst the Italian camp. But their joy was short-lived, for X comes in next lap with wiper motor failure, letting Elford back into the lead. Courage in the Alpha is second, followed by Eamon, then Brabham in the Matra. At Clearways, Courage starts a high-speed reversal down the straight, which ends in the Armco barrier near the start line. The conditions are hardly ideal for cars capable of 200 miles an hour and more. Eamon, now second, chases Elford, followed by Rodriguez, Brabham, and the rest, streaming up to Druids. But once again, trouble stalks the red cars, and Eamon is delayed with waterlogged electrics and a flat tire. Elford is back in the lead, but now is harried by Rodriguez in the John Wyer Porsche. Elford is passed on lap 15. Rodriguez leads the race. Now, after early tyre trouble, Joe Sifford gets the other JW Porsche into fourth position. Meanwhile, back in the pits, Courage brings in the battered Alpha for inspection. But the Alpha is still a goer, and Courage hands over to Dadamage, who gets the car back into the race. Eamon works through the field to get the Ferrari back among the leaders. The Gulf John Wyer pit brings in the leading Porsche to refuel and change tires. This Porsche pit shows particularly good pit work. Kinnunen wants to go, but Pedro gets back in. And he's away, still in the lead. And still it rains. Where's my teammate? Says Jack. There he is, Cobber, having a burn up at South Bank. And indeed he was, but no harm was done to the driver. Surprisingly enough, they managed to put a new flint in and went on to continue the race. The Ferrari pit brings in the X Oliver car to refuel and change tires. X gets out, the fuel goes in. Wheels are checked. But it's not as quick as the JW Porsches were. Oliver refueled. X gets back in, and he's back in the race. Just trimming a Marshall. Things look good for John Wyer, but the second car, now driven by Brian Redman, is overdue. And sure enough, Redman appears on foot, having abandoned, and the marshals, doing a fine job in appalling conditions, are now faced with failing light. The JW Porsche has an unassailable lead, with the Elford Hulme 917 in second place, followed by the Atwood Herman 917. Rodriguez takes the checkered flag and proves his mastery in wet weather driving. A convincing victory for the Gulf John Wyer team, which must have pleased Maestro John Wyer and David York. It was a miserable race for Ferrari, with Eamon best placed at fifth behind the Porsches. The weather conditions slowed the race average and inevitably lengthened the race duration. Whitsunday, May the 24th, and a beautiful day for the Ford Sport meeting. In fact, there were a lot of beautiful things about that day. But let's concentrate on the main event. This was a 15-lap race for the BEA Trident Trophy. Graham Hill was one of the 3 world champions down to drive 3000 GT Ford Capris, all bog standard, all drawn by lot. Grid positions too were drawn from a Castrol oil drum, so there was a lucky dip in that as well. The front row had Susan Tucker Peake, Piers Courage and Graham Hill. Jackie Stewart was in the third row with John Surtees, and Frank Gardner way back with John Miles and Vic Elford. When the flag falls, Graham Hill very politely hangs back a little to give the others a chance. Somehow or other, they all make paddock first time round. Well, nearly all nearly do it. In fact, the whole of this race was a nearly did it, but nobody quite ever did properly. One of the strange things about this race was how very quiet it was. You could almost hear the language. It takes a bunch of real experts to avoid a real expert that's done something really expert. Kraft led Courage for quite a large portion of the race. But then he lost it at Druids and led Courage into the lead, with Vic Elford trying to get into the boot. It certainly speaks volumes for the motor car that they were all running at the finish. And it was Piers Courage who took the flag. The general opinion was there should be more of that sort of racing. Piers Courage takes the magnificent Trident Trophy. And Stewart is explaining in detail exactly what he did all the way around. And so the victors are taken airborne away. Last visit of the year to Brands is for the final round of the Guards Championship Formula 5000, September the 27th. The tyre camps report brisk business, and the GTs and saloon cars are made ready for the supporting races. Peter Gethin was sure of the Formula 5000 Championship again. This meeting was to decide who would take second place. Ulf Norinder retired from racing and appears to have taken up modelling. The battle for second place in the championship is fought between Howden Ganley and Frank Gardner. Also in the lists, Rainey Weisel in Sid Taylor's McLaren, Graham McRae, Trevor Taylor, and Mike Hailwood, both in Lola T190s. And it looks like a big day as the cars queue up for the car parks at Brands. Barbara Jarman is kept busy enrolling new members and dispensing club insignia. And the marshals take up their positions. Jim Garrett on post 3 briefs his team. The race is run in two parts, and Ulf Norinder flags them off to a flying start. Frank Gardner takes the lead, then Walker, Weisel, Taylor, McRae, Howden Ganley, and Mike Hailwood. Lap 2, and Gardner increases his lead, but trouble lies ahead. And Walker passes the slowing Lola, which crawls into the pits with transmission trouble. But Walker's time in the lead is short-lived as well, and he too retires, leaving the lead to Weisel, chased by McRae. Further back, Hailwood and Taylor engage in a nose-to-tail struggle. The pattern seems set for another win for Weisel, with McRae second. Then Howden Ganley, Mike Halewood, and Trevor Taylor, struggling on without a clutch, but remarkably, his lap time is not much reduced. But the results changed in the last few laps. The white McLaren retired with a broken drive shaft, and Graham McRae went on to win. Dennis Southwood, in charge of rescue operations for the BRSCC, has a quiet day. And although we like to see him like this with nothing to do, when the need arises, the boy's on the spot in no time. Here, Brian Martin has a throttle jam open at Paddock in the race for GT cars and charges the bank. The ambulances are not needed, for the driver escapes without a scratch. But that's more than can be said for his beautiful Martin Spider. Dennis and his team set about the task of removing the wreckage before the next race. Although the car may seem to be irreparably damaged, careful rescue at this stage can save many of the components so that Martin can embark on a reasonable rebuild this winter. The only embarrassment for Martin is he was using someone else's engine. And so the bits are drawn carefully away, and we embark on part 2 of the final for the Guards Formula 5000. And Nick in the pace car starts off on lap 1. Into lap 2, their flying lap. Norinder brings the flag down, there's a puff of smoke, and they're away. Into Paddock Bend, Howard Ganley's in the lead, followed by Graham McRae. Up in race control, Bun Crow and his team record every incident almost before it happens. And the light flashes for post number 3. A phone is lifted, a decision taken, and another problem is solved. Meanwhile, back on the circuit, McRae prepares to take Ganley for the lead, and Weisel once again retires. An airborne, Ulf Norinder, flags McRae the winner. And so, as McRae wins and Ulf Norinder retires from the racing scene, we too retire for another year and say farewell to Brands and to the BRSCC film.